When we first had you on the show, this team was in like near dire straits. Rudy Gay was still around. Tank Nation was alive and well. Have you seen a team seemingly go from dire straits to looking like they might be a legitimate 4 or 5 one playoff win team like this before?
Well, I can't remember, but I just, clearly the trade from what it's done with their effectiveness. I disagree with you guys. I think that what they're doing is based off of their offense efficiency because the more efficient they are offensively, the more times they get to set their defense up.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they play, a lot like Miami in the fact that the point guard now is just really a shooter. He's not required, to make a bunch of penetration, play pick and roll. He's basically playing above the free throw line like Mario. So, but they're very effective at it with how they're making shots. And I just think they have a really good shell defensively on their perimeter. And they've cured the problem that all head coaches have to go through. And, how do you transition to your subs? If you look, they're consistently winning the first and third quarter, which allows them, to have a lull, and still be ahead, and bring it home. And I agree with you, because you were talking earlier, you have to beat bad teams. I think if you go back and look when I coach, we dominated bad teams. We might have only lost 2 or 3 games to teams with non-playoff records. It was an important part of my strategy. You have to collect all those wins because you just don't know how it's going to work out when you play against playoff-type teams.
Butch Carter here on Tim and Sid. Butch, Dwane Casey is now, and I understand, and we all understand why, but he's now walking down the road of we can't overlook anyone, and I really didn't like that second quarter. But Butch, you won by 30 points. I don't care. I didn't like the second quarter. We need to clean that up, and we can't overlook anyone because we haven't earned that right.
Right.
If you're a guy in that room, Butch, and you've won 12 of 16 games, does that lose its effect? Like, if you're just a human being by nature, you're going to feel better and better and better about yourself with every win that passes by. How tough is it as a coach to keep that edge with the guys, to keep the desperation when you just keep getting it done?
Well, we got to give Case credit. Right now he's the leader of that group. He is the head coach, and as much as he's had to take a beating for, the things they didn't do right, they're doing things, and the things they didn't do correct in the past, they're doing things right, and, he has to decide what to say to them, and he knows what they'll buy into, and he knows what they won't. I think that the 3, guys they got from Sacramento really helped, because those guys haven't heard that voice before. All they heard was DeMarcus Cousins demanding the basketball. So, Case, you got to give him credit for what's going on, and if that's the path he's going to take, that's his risk. But the last 16, the guy's done a good job. His guys are playing, and they've had a hiccup here or there, but he's done a good job.
One of the things that we heard from Masai Ujiri and Dwane Casey was that in getting new guys and adding them to this team, they wanted good guys. They wanted good character guys. And I want to believe that helps. You've been in rooms before. Does that really help?
Not if a character guy can't play. It's the NBA, it's not the YMCA or, the CYO, you always want character. But more importantly, I think you need guys that want to be in Toronto. And that's what I think those guys want to be in Toronto. Salmas has shown that he's a pure pro. Patterson has played way above what he played at in Sacramento. I like him. I met him this summer when I was at a Kentucky basketball camp. I think that he had to get away from DeMarcus Cousins because DeMarcus's attitude as a super alpha male dominated Patterson. I think he's been allowed to come out, be himself, be the player that he expects himself to be, and he's really been a good find. It's just worked out well.
But I'm getting the feeling you're not a fan of DeMarcus Cousins.
DeMarcus is a super alpha male. Let me tell you guys a quick story. I played with Clark Kellogg and Herb Williams. Both of them played at Ohio State.
Yeah.
And I never thought Herb was going to be as good as he could have been because Clark was such a dominating personality. And Herb was such a nice person that he would just say, that's all Clark. All right? So, most of the basketball people know that, Micah Norai is a kid that, I grew up, his father was my football coach, assistant coach in SAC. And I told him, Patterson's not going to be as good as long as DeMarcus is there because DeMarcus has such a large personality. And, lo and behold, Patterson ends up in a trade here, and man, he's been like glue for Case. He defends different positions. He's making open shots. He's been really good, and he's created value for himself, which is good for him.
It's funny that you say that because we started a conversation yesterday about hockey. And the one thing I like about this show is I think that we can relate sport to sport to sport because, as you know, having a brother who played football, some of that is very relatable stuff. And I was saying that if your best player has good character or works harder than anyone, like that could be the best foundation that any team has. And if your best player is a piece of junk, your team's probably going to emulate that no matter how much talent he has.
Well, like I said, Magic Johnson's the greatest leader I've ever seen. And that was because he took his rookies out to eat after training camp. He was first in every drill. When we ran the mile in Palm Springs, I couldn't catch him. And he was the MVP the year before in the championship series. So,
yeah.
I totally agree with you. That's the example that I've had. I have a golden rule that the most talented must be the most responsible. And to me, that rule is golden.
Butch, playoffs start today.
At least I'm not.
Neither am I. I chuckle every time I say it, but it's a thing. If the Raptors start the playoffs today, they're home to the Bulls.
Yep.
If you look at that head-to-head, what happens?
Well, the problem is, I wouldn't want to play the Bulls or play Atlanta because I think those are the two best coaches, in the East.
But has Thibodeau checked out? Thibodeau was pretty upset at that Luol Deng trade.
Yeah, I mean, he may have checked out, but it's like playing the old Catholic League coach. That's coached there forever. I don't care who he's got. I prefer not to play him. Tibbs is just a pretty good coach, and but the Raps. Look, the most important thing they're doing is they're winning road games because if you're going to be a good playoff team, you have to win a road game.
Your defense has to travel.
Yeah, you just, most of the time, chemistry on a good NBA team shows up on the road. Dominance shows up at home. All right? Historically, I could never figure out why we weren't more dominant at home, even with the teams I coached. I don't know what it is about the Air Canada Center, but we've never had a, dominant 55-win season. We were awesome on the road, and a lot of times, we sweep the whole Texas trip. We win in L.A., both L.A.'s, Seattle, Portland. But, we come home and we give up one to Chicago or we give up one to Cleveland. And, at the end of the day, that's the difference between winning 50 games, and being so. I think what he's doing right now, he's got a really good flow and they can win on the road. But all of us, every coach that's been there, someone's got to find a way to be more dominant at home in the ACC.
Butch Carter joining us here on Tim and Sid at T.O. Butch Carter. Speaking of dominant at home, I'm not going to go as far as to say they've been dominant at home, but since losing back-to-backs to the Toronto Raptors, the New York Knickerbockers have won 6 of 7, including 5 straight. We talked about your friend Mike Woodson in New York. Have they started to figure something out?
Yeah, Carmelo's passing the basketball. When Carmelo hurt his ankle, he was sitting over there watching, and he saw how much, the ball stuck when he was there. So, I read the New York Post and the Daily News, and, Carmelo just says, hey, look, if I pass the ball and find the guy last night, he gave up an end-of-game shot, and the point guard hit a 3, and normally Carmelo shoots the basketball. The problem with the Knicks is that they've not been able to sustain leads. they were up on Phoenix most of the game and let Phoenix back in the game. And then you still have the problem where Woody's going to play Carmelo on the right side of the lane. And when people come to double teaming, it's very hard for him to throw the ball out because he can't throw it out with his left hand. So the Knicks are playing better, and they're doing it without Tyson Chandler. But part of it may be doing better because they decided to put JR in his place. I think Shumpert's an outstanding talent, and New York needs to keep him. But, they are playing better. But, again, when I was on last time, I said, let's look at the next 25 games. Right. All the refs have to do is go, 15-10, 16-9, and I think they're all good.
Butch Carter here on Tim and Sid. Time not our friend, Butch, but there was something on social media last night I kind of caught this morning. And since we got you on the phone, I just kind of dawned on me maybe to throw it at you. And I'm not making this up. Chuck D, I guess, was watching the Magic and the Mavericks.
Yeah, Public Enemies Chuck D.
Public Enemies Chuck D.
Mm-hmm.
And he threw out the following. I thought that Vince Carter would play in Toronto forever. He should go back there for a year when he closes it out. Your general thoughts on that?
Well, I've always said that the current organization and Vince need to make peace. Right now, I don't think that Chris Bosh is going to go into the Hall of Fame as a Raptor. He'll probably go in as a Heat where he won his championships. Vince did so much for basketball for Toronto. I never really realized it till 6 months ago. I went to Brampton to watch a tryout for a youth basketball league.
Mm-hmm.
There was like 500 kids under 12 years old on a tryout to play basketball for 4 teams. It was emotionally for me because these all kids, they've grown up, when they took the Raptor off the jersey and put Toronto on it, that engulfed the whole city. And, at the end of the day, I believe the media's done a bad job. Did Vince fail Toronto or did Toronto fail Vince? All right? Because normally you take a star player and he and the GM have to figure it out. And I don't think the Raps ever got that part done. And when I left, I made a point to stay away from Vince and the organization so that he couldn't blame me, for interfering. All right? He signed his extension and bought into it. And then, he said, hey, the guys you're putting around me. So they don't have to blame anyone. But at the end of the day, everybody needs to say, hey, look, time moves forward. It only moves forward. And if Vince is going to go in the Hall of Fame, man, I think it would be disgusting if he's not wearing a Raptors